Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Our session is about to begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning and welcome to the third International Conference on Biology Education, Natural Science and Technology in COBES 2025 with the theme Emerging Issues on Natural Science, Environment and its Learning Innovation. I am Gindis Angista, your host for today. It's an honor to me to introduce and welcome the Rector of Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, Professor Dr. Harun Joko Prayitno, the Chairman of International Conference on Biology Education, Natural Science and Technology in COBES 2025, Mr. Muhammad Lutfi Hidayat, PhD. Our keynote speakers, Professor Peta Jiwait, PhD, Associate Professor Deakin University Australia, Dr. Wihinbu, National University of Malaysia, Dr. Santiami MSc, Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, lecturers and staff of Biology Education Department, and all the participants of the conference. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Thanks to Allah, the Lord of the universe, for his blessing and mercy for us to be gathered here in the third International Conference on Biology Education, Natural Science and Technology in COBES 2025. May salawat and salam be showered down to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who has guided us from the darkness of Jahiliyah to the brightness of Islam. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to read the agenda for today. First, opening session. Second, singing the Indonesian national anthem and Sang Surya. Third, Al-Quran recitation and interpretation. Fourth, welcoming and opening remarks. Fifth, main event. Sixth, announcement. And the last, closing session. Well, ladies and gents, we are now holding the first agenda, the opening by reciting Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The second agenda is singing Indonesian national anthem, Indonesia Raya, and Muhammadiyah official anthem, Sang Surya. I would like to ask all the participants to stand up as a tribute to our national anthem. Thank you, ladies and gents. You may have your seat back. Our next agenda is Al-Quran recitation on Surah Al-Mu'minun verses 18 to 21 will be recited by Sister Naira Amara Paramita and will be interpreted by Sister Najmi Hazako Amina. When the Quran is recited, listen to it attentively and be silent, so you may be shown mercy. We would like to ask all the participants to keep the silence during the recitation.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وأنزلنا من السماء ماء بقدر فأسكناه في الأرض وإنا على ذهاب به لقادرون فأنشأنا لكم به جنات من نخيل وأعناب لكم فيها فواكه كثيرة ومنها تأكلون وشجرة تخرج من طور سيناء تنبت بالدهن وسبغ للآكلين وإن لكم في الأنعام لعبرة نسقيكم مما في بطونها ولكم فيها منافع كثيرة ومنها تأكلون صدق الله العظيم.
I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan's temptation. And we have sent down rain from the sky in a measured amount and settled it in the earth. And indeed, we are able to take it away. And we brought forth for you thereby gardens of palm trees and grapevines in which for you are abundant fruits and from which you eat. And we brought forth a tree issuing from Mount Sinai, which produce oil and food olive for those who eat. And indeed, for you in livestock is a lesson we give you drink from that which is in their bliss, and for you in them are numerous benefits, and from them you eat. Allah is the most truthful. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Let those good for all his words. Moving to the fourth agenda is welcoming and opening remarks. The welcoming remark will be delivered by the chairman of International Conference on Biology Education, Natural Science and Technology in COBES 2025. Please welcome Mr. Muhammad Lutfi, PhD. Time is yours.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, Professor Harun from Jakarta as a rector of UMS, and good morning, Dr. Peter White. Good. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Firstly, I would like to express my respect to Rector of Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta and the Vice Rectors, the Dean and the Vice Deans of Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. Special gratitude to all keynote speakers, Associate Professor Peter White, PhD from Deakin University, Australia, Dr. Wihin Bu from UKM, Malaysia, and Dr. Santiami from Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. And to all invited guests, presenters, participants, and College of Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. Dear audience, Alhamdulillah, all praise and thanks to Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful. Then we ask Allah to grant salawat and salam to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the International Conference on Biology Education, Natural Science and Technology in COBES 2025, hosted by Biology Education Department, Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. On behalf on the committee, I would like be happy to have your attention for the report of the conference that I am going to present. The conference theme is Emerging Issues on Natural Sciences, Environment, and its Learning Innovation. Today's conference will be divided into two sessions, panel sessions and parallel session. At the panel session will be the presentation of keynote speakers, Dr. Associate Professor Peter White, PhD, and then I mean Dr. Wihin Bu and Dr. Santiami. The parallel session will be the presentation of accepted papers on this conference. I am delighted to report that this conference has received an overwhelming response, Alhamdulillah, with a total of 121 articles will be presented from across countries, from Pakistan, India, Uzbekistan, Russia, and also Indonesia. These articles present cutting-edge research and innovative ideas in the field of natural science and education. Okay, finally, we realized some problem may occur during the conference. What can we say is we do apologize for unpredictable inconvenience during this virtual conference. I hope you find this conference joyful and fruitful. Bila taufiq wal hidayah, thank you so much. Thank you very much. And let's begin our conference. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad Lutfi, for the welcoming remark that will be delivered by Rector of Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, Professor Dr. Harun Joko Prayitno, and later will open the conference officially. Professor Harun, time is yours.
Terima kasih Mbak. Tes, ya, terdengar nggih suara ya?
Iya, Bro.
Terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala. Good morning everybody. The honorable, the jury speakers. The first to Professor Peter G. White, PhD from Deakin University, Australia. Morning, Pro Peter from Solo, Indonesia. I'm very happy to meet you today. And then to Dr. Wee Hin Bu from University Kebangsaan Malaysia, and to my colleague kepada Santiami, PhD from Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, let us extend our praise and gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the most beneficent and most merciful. May we also seek Allah blessing of salawat and salam upon the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. Morning and welcome to the third International Conference on Biology Education, Natural Science and Technology or INCOBES. It is both an honor and privilege to address you today in my capacity as the President or Rector Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta located in Solo, Surakarta, the Central Java of Indonesia. I extend my warmest greeting and sincere gratitude to all the distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, researchers, educators, lecturers, students, or participants who have joined us from across the globe to take part in this significant event. Because the meeting today designed by hybrid platform, yeah. Today, we are honored to host distinguished invited speakers who have made outstanding contributions in their respective field. This international conference under the theme Emerging Issues on Natural Science, Environment, and it is Learning Innovation aims to explore recent scientific advancement in natural science and the environment, discuss their educational implication and share innovative pedagogical practices. Recently, UMS or Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta has been recognized as one of Indonesia's leading universities, as highlighted in the Time Higher Education or THE Impact Ranking 2024. Additionally, OMS has achieved the distinction of being ranked as the #1, the best Islamic university in Indonesia. Alhamdulillah. According to the THE World University Rankings or WUR 2025. Furthermore, the university's research quality attained an exceptional score of 5.8 points, positioning it as the institution with the highest research quality in the nation. As the leading private university in Indonesia, UMS remains steadfast in its commitment to advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. In the faculty level, we have collaboration both in national and international levels. We have more than 11 undergraduate programs, 5 master degree programs, and 3 doctor programs of 90% with have excellent accreditation from BANPT Indonesia and from LAM. Yeah. In the last 10 years, we have massively arranged students such as delegating students for internship programs and students exchange to neighboring countries. Staff exchange such as visiting professor, joint research, joint publication have also been implemented with both national and international institutions. This even underscores our unwavering commitment to achieving the status of a world-class university by 2029. Yeah. Through this initiative, we aspire to strengthen the relationship and cooperation between OMS and its partner institutions, fostering mutual benefit and engaging the impact of research and publication for all involved. I am pleased to note the remarkable response to this conference, of course, which has attracted almost 200 participants and presenters. I think it's a better conference. The submitted article reflecting its research and advancement in biology, natural sciences, technology, and educational has decidedly raised habit or understanding of life, ecosystem, environmental sustainability. It is highly encouraging to witness such robust engagement from researchers and educators across the globe. The following detail of the distribution in COBES 2025 participant, total participant 175 more, oral presentation 111, non-presenter 64, and general presenters more 73, undergraduate 24, yeah, additional presenter the 10 additional presenter and 4 additional paper, so total paper more than 121. From Indonesia 137. Thank you so much from Uzbekistan. How do you do in Uzbekistan? Maybe next year I will be visit to Uzbekistan. My duta besar Indonesia from Yogyakarta in Uzbekistan, ya. More than 35 from India to participant, Timor Leste one participant. So distribution of participating countries more than 4 countries, ya. In conclusion, I would like to cover my deepest gratitude to the organizing committee, Pak Dekan, ya, head of department, the scientific committee, and all those who have contributed tirelessly to the success of this event. Your dedication and effort have created this enriching platform for collaboration in intellectual exchange. Once more again, I extend my warmest welcome to all participants, speakers, and distinguished guests. Thank you so much, everybody, and I wish you a productive and memorable conference experience. Let us to start this conference by Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Semoga
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Allah meridai kita semua.
Amin.
Enjoy the
Amin.
conference. Thank you so much. Morning from Indonesia, from Solo. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Prof. Harun.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Harun, for officially opening the conference. Before entering the next agenda is the documentation session. The first slide.
Someone. Okay.
Please open your camera to all the participants. Please open your camera.
Okay.
The second slide. The third slide. The fourth slide. The fifth slide. And then last slide. Ladies and gents, soon we'll be joining the main event, but before that, let's give some preparation time to our keynote speakers and enjoy this video presented by Biology Education Department.
Program Studi Pendidikan Biologi Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta adalah lembaga pengembang keilmuan pendidikan biologi berdasarkan nilai-nilai keislaman, memberi arah perubahan dan pengembangan IPTEX yang islami dalam rangka mewujudkan lulusan berkualitas, kompetitif, dan memiliki jiwa wirausaha. Melalui pengalaman panjang sejak berdiri pada 1 November 1985, saat ini program studi pendidikan biologi Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta merupakan salah satu program studi yang bereputasi nasional dengan peringkat akreditasi unggul dari Badan Akreditasi Nasional Perguruan Tinggi pada tahun 2021. Terletak di kota Surakarta, sebuah kota yang memadukan keindahan budaya Jawa dan kemajuan teknologi, membuat kota Surakarta saat ini dinobatkan menjadi kota paling nyaman untuk ditinggali di Indonesia menurut Ikatan Ahli Perencanaan Indonesia. Lokasi yang strategis membuat program studi pendidikan biologi Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta menawarkan lingkungan yang nyaman bagi mahasiswa untuk kegiatan belajar dan penelitian.
Program Studi Pendidikan Biologi FKIP UMS adalah salah satu lembaga penyelenggara pendidikan calon pendidik biologi yang profesional, islami, memberi arah perubahan IPTEX, berjiwa wirausaha, serta berkarakter utama. Prodi Pendidikan Biologi FKIP UMS didukung oleh sarana dan prasarana yang sangat memadai serta tenaga pendidik yang profesional di bidangnya. Mari bergabung bersama kami di Prodi Pendidikan Biologi FKIP UMS.
Menjadi bagian dari salah satu institusi pendidikan global, program studi pendidikan biologi Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta secara aktif mendatangkan para ilmuwan terkemuka dari seluruh dunia dalam berbagai aktivitas, seperti visiting profesor, seminar, kuliah tamu, dan kolaborasi riset. Selain itu, mahasiswa program studi pendidikan biologi Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta juga terlibat aktif dalam berbagai kegiatan, baik nasional hingga internasional, dengan tetap mempertahankan latar belakang budaya nasional. Selain dalam bidang pembelajaran, program studi pendidikan biologi Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta juga menyediakan akses untuk kegiatan penelitian yang berdampak besar pada masyarakat. Hal ini dibuktikan dengan banyaknya publikasi hasil penelitian.
Finally, we get into the main event. Let's welcome our keynote speakers, Professor Peta Jiwait, PhD, Associate Professor Deakin University Australia, Dr. Wihinbu, National University of Malaysia, Dr. Santiami Major Science, Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. All the participation and the discussion will be moderated by Mrs. Vina Listiawati, PhD. Mrs. Vina Listiawati, time is yours.
Thank you, Candice. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third International Conference on Biology Education, Natural Science, and Technology in COBES 2025. I'm Vina Listiawati. It's an honor to be a moderator for the main session of today's conference. This conference is conducted in online setting. Therefore, we would like to welcome all the participants who are joining us virtually. We wish you can enjoy the INCOBES 2025. For today's conference, we will get a closer look into emerging issues on natural science, environment, and its learning innovation. We have incredible list of keynote speakers. First, we have Associate Professor Pita J. White, PhD, from Deakin University, Australia. Hello, Dr. Pita White.
Hello, good morning. Good to be here.
Okay, thank you very much for being with us. Second, we have Dr. Wihin Bu from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Dr. Wihin Bu, hello.
Morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Okay, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks.
And lastly, we have Dr. Santiami from Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, Indonesia. Hello, Dr. Santiami.
Good morning, Vina.
Thank you very much for being with us. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes. Each keynote speakers in this session will have about 40 minutes presentation. After all the presentation from all the keynote speakers, there will be Q&A session for about 20 minutes. If you have any question for our keynote speakers, please raise your virtual hands and turn on your microphone when I call on you to ask a question. You can also use chat feature to ask your questions. Ladies and gentlemen, our first keynote speaker is Associate Professor Pita J. White, PhD from Deakin University, Australia. Dr. Pita White led the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, PISA Environmental Science Contributions to the 2025 Science Framework Agency in the Anthropocene, and is active in climate change education research and advocacy. She co-directs the Center for Regenerating Futures, a faculty center that explores Anthropocene challenges and the colonizing practices while building researcher capacity. She is the editor-in-chief of the Australian Journal of Environmental Education. Her current research follows three narratives: science and biology education, sustainability, environmental and climate change education, and collaborative activist methodology and research. Today, she will talk about climate change education, a focus on socio-ecological challenges. Without further ado, now let's please welcome Associate Professor Pita J. White, PhD. Dr. Pita, I'll hand it over to you for the presentation.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. And I'm hoping that you can see me. Is everything okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me today. As I get started, I'd like to thank the organising committee, the university rector, vice rector, and the dean. It's an honour to be here today. I'm looking forward to talking to you about climate change education, a focus on socio-ecological challenges. Whoops. As we get going in presentations in Australia, we like to bring acknowledgement to the country that we're standing on, paying respects to our First Nations elders, past and present. And the images on your screen today are from the local area that I have the privilege of living in. So this is Wurundjeri Bik, or Wurundjeri country. And you can see represented in the photo here is a lyrebird, or the bullen bullen. And in the other photo is a feather that I found discarded by the bird. And it's just an incredible reminder that as seasons change, we need to pay attention. And I'm so pleased today to be speaking with an audience that is committed to biology and the environment, and to thinking about how we learn together with our environment. And that's a lot of what I would really like to talk about today. I'd now like to acknowledge that, we are living in challenging times. So I think this representation shows the temperature anomalies from 1951 through to 2020. And I think as you watch this representation, it starts to become very clear that we're experiencing exponential change in our environment. And I think that's a real challenge for us, and something that we need to be able to pay attention to. And along with that challenge, also that concern of Anthropocene challenges, I'd also like to acknowledge the IPCC and the amazing work that they do to support us to be able to think about these times. And in the 6th synthesis report that came out in March 2023, now 2 years ago, they offered this warning. And the warning is that the pace and scale of climate action are insufficient to tackle climate change. And so it's this backdrop that brings us to think about, what does it mean to educate in the Anthropocene? And given that we are facing such significant challenges, how do we as educators move forward? What is our responsibility as educators in this time? And that's what I'd like to talk about today. Firstly, I'm going to bring some information together for you from a project that we're working on currently. This is Australian Research Council funded work. The project is called Enacting Climate Change Education. If you would like to use the QR code, you'll be able to access our project website and stay up to date with our findings and our outputs. It's an international team working on this project. So Russell Tytler is our lead. I work closely with him, of course. We have colleagues from Finland, the University of Helsinki, in Professor Maija Aksela, and also colleagues from National Taiwan Normal University, particularly Professor Ying-Xiao Su. And then my colleagues at Deakin are Joseph Ferguson, Amrita Kamath, Shefali Sharma Wallace, and Fernanda Rezende. And as a project team, we are paying attention to how to transform science education in the classroom, nothing less than science education transformation. And so we're really looking to bring contemporary climate-related science to develop the science inquiry and practices for our young people, and to support student and teacher agency. And that idea of student and teacher agency is important. I'll talk about that as we go today. We work with scientists who are doing contemporary or current climate science to generate the core content and the focus of our teaching and learning sequences. And we use the current climate science to transform our science education. We also collaborate with colleagues to infuse research across initial teacher education. So in all of our education programs, we hope to infuse outcomes from this project. And as I mentioned before, it's an international collaboration, and we're really pleased to have significant input from Finland and Taiwan, together with the work that we're doing in Australia. Some of our initial publications, which will frame for you how we've come at this research, is a textbook analysis, which has considered how are each of the 3 countries supporting their learners through their teachers to engage directly with climate change. And the findings from this analysis will be coming out soon, we hope. We also conducted a teacher survey, again across the 3 countries, to explore teacher preparedness and teacher confidence in teaching about climate change. And again, those results will be coming out soon. Currently, we're working on describing our co-design strategies, so how we work with our teachers. And that will be something that we have reported on already, but we'll be writing some more on soon. We consider climate change aesthetics, design-based research, our major methodology, And then we will produce a few publications around particular sequences. Often our sequences relate to very well-known science, for example, understanding light. But we've also constructed sequences around particular species like bees as really great indicators of biodiversity loss or change. And we've also constructed an introductory sequence that allows us to see into a student's experience of thinking about climate change. And we teach through planetary boundaries and are looking forward to writing a paper about that soon, as well as several chapters in handbooks. I'd just like to take a moment to explain the co-design we do with teachers and students, because I think this methodology and practice is very important. So we identify scientists, as I mentioned, we collect research outputs, we use videos the scientists are already creating to communicate their research, and any other tools, infographics, even research papers, and we use those as the basis for how we then co-construct with teachers and pre-service teachers teaching and learning sequences for young people. Our project focuses on years 5 to 10, so about 10 to 15-year-old students. And so once we've got those resources from the scientists and our understandings developed, we then incorporate great pedagogy and weave that into sequences that we think will influence students. We implement those sequences in classrooms, and we pay attention to the student outcomes, so student work samples and interviews with students to enable us to understand the impact of the sequences we've generated. We also work closely with the teacher to realize how easy has it been for them to implement these sequences, as well as thinking about how they perceive their student feedback. And then we modify and repeat. Some of our sequences are in the 3rd or 4th iteration, and we're still modifying to make sure we're doing the best that we can. Some of the sequences we've developed so far are listed here. I have a bias towards biology, as I'm sure many of you in the room do, so you'll be pleased to see things like bees as biodiversity, endemic frogs, and we have a really interesting sequence coming together specifically for Year 10 students who I think are a very specific cohort of students and require some careful consideration. So that will be coming out soon. This is an example of one of our pedagogical strategies where we've developed some ideas around climate change and worked with a graphic illustrator to represent them in a very tight, consolidated format where we've got our challenges that we're facing now, then some ideas around what agency might look like, and then some aspirational future scenarios that we hope we're working towards. So this resourcing will be developed into a sequence and enable us to work with teachers and students as we go forward. We are framing our work around Earth systems and human systems. So this slide reminds me to introduce to you possibly, or to remind you of, the planetary boundaries and how important they are as a very well-researched framework to be exploring with our young people. I'm compelled to mention as well that in our curriculum, we really only attend to 4 of the spheres of the Earth: lithosphere, atmosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere. But what we're doing in our project is complexifying the idea or the understandings of how our planet works. So we use the 9 planetary boundaries represented here to enable us to dig in more deeply and in more complex ways with our young people. Climate change is clearly a complex issue, as are all of the challenges of the Anthropocene. Otherwise, they would have been solved and we wouldn't be in the situation we're in currently. So we must retain that complexity when we speak with our young people, because if we linear it, if we simplify it, if we make it easy to understand, the importance, the integrity, the interactions between the necessarily complex situations are lost. And I think our young people have frustrations with not being able to appreciate the full complement of what's going on. It's very important we pay attention to showcasing the complexity of our ecosystems. Similarly, there's great complexity in our human systems. So we don't ever get to act as independent actors. We're always part of multiple systems, and we are socially constructed as beings, whether it be an education system that we're working within, a school community that we're in. We're always managing multiple systems, and these systems of human systems are often negatively entangling with our earth systems. And that for me is the piece of climate change education that we must pay attention to. And of course, there is a complexity of information. Some of it's accurate and some of it is intentionally misleading. And so we must train and support our young people to be able to tell the difference. What does it, why are we being misled? Why are we being fed false information? Why are we being encouraged to believe climate change isn't actually happening? Because it serves some people in our society, and we have to be very critical of that kind of service, and we have to pay attention to not be bought into false ways of thinking. So it's really important we think about our human systems. Now, this might feel unusual in a science education context, but I think it's an important strategy, and I think it's the way of the future for science education. I'll explain more in a moment. If we pay attention to our human systems, these might be some of the systems that we find are going particularly badly for us. Obviously, the Anthropocene is named as an epoch because of the impacts humans have had. So we talk about anthropogenic or human-induced change. We've got a digital disruption in oh so many ways going on currently. Yes, there's wonderful things about the digital advancements that are going on currently. For example, I'm able to speak with you today, which is such a treat. But there are some complexities and some implications. And as I'm sure we've all experienced in the last 5 years, global pandemics, globalization, urbanization, political uncertainty, demographic changes, and increasing social inequity. These are all challenges that we must take up. They're human system challenges, and we must pay attention to what's going on and work out how we as educators share responsibility to work with our young people to understand the challenge and to know their role in bringing change. So how might I frame climate change education? Well, for me, firstly, it's about understanding Earth systems and how they are now changing at unexpected rates. And it's the rate of change that makes anthropogenic or human-induced climate change the thing that we're talking about when I say climate change. Of course, climate change is a system that is going on for our Earth systems continually. The climate system is a very important system, and it does come with change. But what we're talking about is the rate of change, the human-induced rate of change. And that exponential rate of change is increasingly problematic because we are exceeding 6 of our planetary boundaries to date. The tipping points of that planetary boundary exceeding are unclear. And once we reach a tipping point, we're not certain whether we can find a way back. So then we have human systems. I've spoken about those already today. So human systems that negatively entangle with Earth systems, and they produce socio-ecological challenges. So I think socio-ecological challenges is an important way to name and frame what we might have called an environmental issue. But I believe strongly that if we call things environmental issues, then we are externalizing the problem. The environment has an issue, whereas it's important we understand that that issue is socially constructed and produced. So it's the entanglement of Earth systems and human systems creating a problem. And so if we understand our role as human society in creating that problem, then we've got a starting point for thinking through where we can act and how we as educators can engage our young people and our communities to bring that action to life. I'll talk more about action and agency as we go through. Another key part of climate change education, I believe, is the use of data to model the rate of change, but also to understand that these changes are human-induced. So being able to apply data and make evidence-based decisions is key for everyone to be able to pull that literacy together and understand climate change as a human-induced concern. As I mentioned, taking action to address socio-ecological challenges locally is key, but those actions, I think, are necessarily different to what we might have undertaken when we were thinking about sustainability. As we're now framing our concerns through climate change education, necessarily our actions must be critical and must address the needs of climate impacts. So while we're working locally, we must be thinking about the global issues that we're experiencing, and also considering how we attend to our local issues in a global context. And I think this brings us to think about, excuse me, developing agency, a learner's agency. And agency is not necessarily just taking action, but it's understanding why you're taking action, and that action will necessarily be political. And I think it's the politicizing of what we do in education that is central to understanding how our human systems are working with our earth systems, often negatively. So a colleague of mine, Anne Polina from the Kimberleys in Western Australia, describes this as us needing to understand how to right-size our human systems, to manage our ecosystems, and to be in balance with them. So this is a representation of a lecture I gave a year or so ago. And so I wanted to show this to you just to reinforce the complexity that we're talking about. So I will share my slides, and you're more than welcome to unpack this, this narration, and you'll certainly hear a lot about a lot of these things mentioned today. Oh, sorry, I wanted to say that I think what we're trying to do with our science education is make it science education fit for the future. So the curriculum that we might have had in the past might need to change and adapt to enable us to be able to teach well for communities and our society to move into the future. So the idea of a socio-ecological challenge builds on the work that we've done in the OECD PISA, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But specifically the ideas from Agency in the Anthropocene, which was a support document put alongside the Science 2025 framework. And I really encourage you, especially your curriculum developers, to be looking at the 2025 science framework, to think about how to shape your curriculum, your national or localized curriculum, to relate to those ideas, not just to perform well in PISA, which might be an aspiration of your country, particularly your political leaders, but also to be working with a really well-informed document that allows you to be thinking about contemporary science education and how to apply that in your context. I believe curriculum reform is coming. In Australia, we have a process around our curriculum development. I'll talk about that in a moment, but it's a 9-year process, and we're just at the start of another round. So I think it's really important that we think about, is that okay to stay with our typical cycles, or is there more urgency required in bringing together a new understanding and a new positioning for science education, particularly biology education, to lead us into the future? So we must be socially informed in our science education. Programming in schools requires school and teacher scaffolding, resourcing, and support. I'll speak more about that in a moment. So we've just talked about what is climate change education. I'd also like to talk a little bit about what is climate change, and maybe how do we understand what the implications are. Then why do we need to consider it? And then how do we go about it? So this frames the next part of my talk. So what is climate change education? Well, when I'm asked that question, I necessarily turn to the IPCC, and I hope that you do too. I think they work very hard to present us with reports that are clear, very concise, and as I mentioned before, it's often the synthesis reports that really allow us to amalgamate the information and understand it in terms of how it relates to us. One of the things that were represented in the synthesis report was a really beautiful slide deck that unpacked some of the issues. So I encourage you to locate that resource and to find ways to use it, because it unpacks some of these ideas here about how we are really looking at human impacts and how they are causing change. But then it gives us some clarity around the human systems that we can be talking about. So these four listed here and represented in various ways, they're the human systems that we must start paying attention to and looking to right size. We must also use evidence to understand the changes that we have experienced and that we must bring about as we proactively move into a future. So this is a representation here of temperature change globally, like the one I started with today, but also a little bit different in that this isn't reporting the anomalies, it isn't reporting the global average increase. So we must build a capacity in our young people to appreciate what does this modeling, what are these evidences, what are these representations show us and tell us, and how do we understand them when they've been manipulated to present misinformation, as we know is actually happening around the world. Our messages must come with hope. Of course, we don't want to feel incapacitated as educators. We want to be sure that we're bringing engagement to our young people, but also learning. And I think engagement and learning are necessarily different. And so we must find ways to bring hope. And I believe that climate action and the working together of communities is a very good strategy for bringing hope. Of course, we need to understand the challenge. And I think the IPCC have been very clear about what some of our key challenges are. And fairness is one of those key ideas that we must pay attention to, appreciating that those who contributed the least to climate change are often the most vulnerable to its impacts. And it's certainly important that I think about that from my positioning today as an Australian, speaking to my colleagues here today as Indonesians. I also like that the IPCC pay attention to enablers for effective climate action. And I think, again, these are the human systems that we must think about reforming, changing, working with, adapting to bring the kinds of changes that we need to see. And I also really like that they talk about human factors that enable that action. So these are the things that operate within the systems that we must work at building. Trust, collaboration, recognition that some can contribute more than others, and the sharing of benefits and burdens. So these ideas are complex, but they're beautifully socially oriented and become really nice foundations for us thinking about human system change. And once again, why are we doing that? Because in 2023, the IPCC warning was that the pace and scale of climate action are insufficient to tackle climate change. We must reform our strategies. We must reform our curriculum, our human systems to be able to right size to live on this planet. So I encourage you again to go to the IPCC if you're looking for the kind of resourcing that you need to be clear about what is anthropogenic climate change or human-induced climate change. Excuse me. Now in Victoria, I have the opportunity to look to my state government to provide me the local data that I need to make the narratives about climate change very localized and real for my students here in Victoria. So I look to my state government to be able to find that data. And they often produce representations that are really useful. And I can interrogate these with my students and unpack what they mean and think about the complexity. At the same time, I'm safeguarding my students to be ready to determine misinformation and to be able to appreciate when a representation comes to them that is incorrect, that they can work out why it's incorrect and challenge that knowledge. I also want my students to be familiar with some key representations, like the exponential growth at the end of graphs that we might be looking at, to really appreciate that it's the rate of change from the last 100 years or so that is the significant piece of interest and the important part that we must attend to. In Australia, I have the Climate Council also producing very useful resources. As you can see at the top, news items, reports, resources, ways to get involved in local communities, media articles I can use with my students. And then, of course, I can talk more about who the Climate Council is and why we need them in Australia. And then a few years ago, I developed this short quiz. It's 5 questions, but it talks about, to educators, it encourages you to assess your own knowledge. Because while it's a challenge to constantly be bringing new science into our understanding, as science educators, that is our responsibility. So how are you going with your climate change knowledge? This little quiz may help you to ascertain your levels of understanding. And I hope that after my presentation today, you do very well on this quiz. But please take a look at the QR code. And when I send my slides out later, I hope that you give the quiz a go and see how you go. All right, so now I want to tell you, why do we need to consider climate change education as a priority and a responsibility as educators, specifically biology educators? Well, from some work I've done before with Joseph Ferguson, I mentioned earlier, in our ARC team, as well as 2 young leaders for the School Strike for Climate, I now believe that our young people are different to what they might have been 5 years ago. They are often very politically savvy, and they are often very politically active, and they're expecting that level of political awareness to be present in our teaching. And if we shy away from bringing the political and complexity into our teaching, then our young people disengage, because they must learn about these issues from somewhere, and they will learn about these things on their own, potentially through misinformation. So as educators in education systems, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are teaching with the right resources at the right time. Of course, we're going to manage climate anxiety, and there are some great resources like this one from the Climate Council that enable us to work with our communities, our young people, to think about how to manage our anxiety. I feel anxiety on a daily basis around anthropogenic climate change, but I manage that by managing the inputs that come my way. And this reminds me to really strongly encourage you to think again about teaching or trying to teach climate change through showing series of impact images, talking about the impacts that happen. In Australia, we have a great opportunity to talk about bushfires. It generates really interesting data. It's terrifying, but it's interesting. But I don't do that anymore, because I've learned that teaching climate, or trying to teach climate change through impacts, doesn't enable us to learn about why we have climate change, to understand what our roles and responsibilities are in not having climate change or bringing change to that system, and to being educators that enable hope in what we're doing. So I no longer use photographs or representations of climate impacts, floods, fire, environmental devastation, loss of habitat. They're there, I talk about them, but I don't use them as the way to understand what is climate change. I think that's a very significant point. So the story I want to tell just now is to bring the PISA experience into into my keynote and to share with you. So in 2020, the Oxford University Press, in preparation for revisiting the science framework for the PISA OECD assessment, they conducted this analysis, inviting response from around the world, asking teachers, what should the core purpose of science education be? So this is really, really important data for us to think about. One of the questions was, is current science education fit for the future? And there's that term that's coming back again, fit for the future. And in fact, only 31% of respondents suggested that yes, science education is fit for the future. And as you can see, one of the key points that students wanted to see unpacked was that about climate change and the natural environment. Some other great resources for you to consider is that we're now in an era of fake news. This incredible report by Jonathan Osborne and colleagues has come out of Stanford about science education in an age of misinformation. So this is partly where I draw my information to be able to talk about misinformation from. So please look to this report. I've been part of a wonderful team, including colleagues of yours from Indonesia, revising or exploring curriculum challenges, and where do our curriculars support us as educators to engage school learners in climate change thinking. And so while climate change appears in many formal curricula, it appears in various places. For example, in Australia, it's located in places that we don't necessarily need to attend to. So I encourage you to take a look at this analysis and others. There are now several others, and to think about how are we supporting ourselves with curriculum policy to enable teaching in this way. The OECD produce a lot of resources to support us, and the Learning Compass is a really valuable one. So it supports us to think about teaching for well-being and for working with co-agency of peers, teachers, and parents in community. So the OECD produces fabulous resources. Please do engage directly with their website, but also around the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA. Please consider the resources developed through that program. PISA is an international assessment. It's conducted every 3 years. 15-year-olds take the assessment in a school context, but also there are other questionnaires for students, parents, schools, and community. So we know a lot when we do a PISA analysis about what's going on for learning for our young people. That is the point of PISA. So it's a really wonderful opportunity to get an international snapshot about what our young people think. So again, I encourage you to come to this website and look at their results, their publications, webinars, data, and various other things. It's a very well-resourced website. There's a great video that you can watch. I'm not going to show it today, but I do encourage you to see how we can understand the usefulness of PISA and the data that comes from it at a national level. So the framework was put together in a very complex way. There were a number of groups that came together. Eventually, the science expert group with 8 international academics collaborating. And then for this round, they struck an environmental science expert group, and I was lucky to be a part of that. These were my colleagues, and we worked together to define agency in the Anthropocene. The data we built on was the analysis conducted on the 2006 PISA results with a report called Green at 15. You can access these reports. The data from 2006 and 2015 showed outcomes such as environmentally enthusiastic students generally scored about 80 points higher in science than environmentally indifferent students. So we appreciate that it is important to ground science learning, and in fact all student learning, in our environment and in the context that we live in. In 2018, there was a global competence assessment, and this taught us through the data analysis of the data that our young people understand what sustainability means. They just don't know what to do about it. So those ideas led us to think of that there is a misalignment between action and agency and attitudes, beliefs, and knowledge and skills. So that's where we decided to position our thinking around environmental science for the 2020 Science Framework. So please look at this website. It unpacks the science framework very nicely, and it allows you to see the elements that have been attended to. These are the competencies mentioned in the big circle in the middle, but there are some other key points, especially around science identity, that are very worth exploring. And then agency in the Anthropocene fits in as a piece of the framework. So you can download the document and read it. And this is the definition that we designed. And the orange bits here, I'm thinking might be a bit of a surprise for you to see this in science education, where we think that actions will be appreciated, approved, and effective, and that we're looking at ways of being and acting in the world, people as part of rather than separate from our ecosystems. Thinking about societies that may have created injustices and what we're going to do about that, demonstrating hope, resilience, and efficacy in the face of crisis. And this is where we get to socio-ecological challenges and understanding how they fit and are important for us to think about. We necessarily pushed on from the idea of sustainability. Sustainability can be theorized beautifully, but it tends to be fraught in action, where we get into these loops of taking independent action, reducing our ecological footprint, very important things to do, but we must do it in the context of appreciating that we live in a community and a society, and it's our systems that need to change to enable us as players or actors in the system to bring change around. So I'm not suggesting we don't have power. We are the power. Consumerism power is essential, but we must work together and in collectives to effect that change. And this is what led us to theorize with agency. And then we really wanted to use the term Anthropocene because it's a little controversial, but it's also it's a challenging word and possibly doesn't articulate well into a variety of languages. But I think that challenging translation is also important because we must understand that this is a different time, we're different context, and hence we're thinking about socio-ecological challenges. So PISA operates through competencies. These are the 3 science competencies. So please have a look at those. They will be quite familiar. But the environmental science competencies are what we defined. And these are things that are being assessed this year as our 15-year-olds take the assessment. So I think PISA used our opportunity of the environmental science group to be around to appreciate that environmental education has actually known for a long time that it's not about, or successful education is not about developing awareness, but teasing that awareness into action and agency. It's not about behavior change, but it's about the bigger systems change. So not focusing on the individual, but enabling that analysis at the systems level. Sustainability, as I said, often defined beautifully, but often enacted in very insular ways. And bringing that individual idea of sustainability and agency to consider our consumer power, but as part of a system. And then we must also think about developing agency of teachers. So I've worked through most of that already. And again, as you have my slides, please do feel free to go back through these. Focusing on teacher support now, I want to think about how do we go about it. So we think about our education systems first and foremost. We have curriculum policy that guides what happens in a school context. We don't only have curriculum in schools, of course, our early learning have curriculum. Our
Sorry, Peter.
Yes?
Maybe you can wrap up your presentation.
I'm wrapping up. Thank you. Yes. Got my timer on. And then we have, so curriculum policy, teachers in schools and agency, and resources and modeling. So in terms of resources, there are lots of resources out there that can enable you to work meaningfully and often in very focused ways. And I'm showing you now a number of slides that really showcase some of the resources I've been working on in the last several years. And it's okay to flash through these because you will have access to my slides and can see them in more detail. I do want to take a moment to shout out to the Story of Stuff. It's a fantastic resource that I encourage you to pay attention to. 3 particular videos that will enable you to think about these challenges really clearly. This one particularly enables thinking about misinformation. So again, a shout out to Cranky Uncle. And then there are some policy projects we're doing in Australia, so you can have a think about those. At the university level, we're paying attention through the Centre for Regenerating Futures, which enables us to think about, as mentioned in my introduction, how do we address Anthropocene challenges while decolonising knowledges and practices? And we do that through various strategies in the centre. So they are indicated there. So I hope today that you were able to follow me through thinking about what is climate change, how do we go about climate change education, how do we consider it, and how do we go about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pita White, for such an informative and comprehensive presentation about the importance of understanding socio-ecological challenges to engage in climate change education.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our second keynote speaker is Dr. Wee Hin Boo from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Dr. Wee Hin Boo received his doctorate degree from the University of Syracuse, Japan. During his time in Japan, his principal study was on the relationship between the symbiotic algae with reef-associated organisms in the Indo-Pacific region. Currently, his main interest is in collating marine biodiversity and environmental data to detect patterns and indicate species in extreme environments. He co-developed My Iklim, a Malaysia-centric climate change educational website aimed at bridging the gap between academic research and public awareness. He also served as a scientific advisor or consultant for non-governmental organizations such as Save Our Seahorses Malaysia, Reef Check Malaysia, and World Wildlife Fund for Nature. Today, he will talk about Art Can Show You the World, bringing academic and citizen science. Without further ado, now let's please welcome Dr. Wee Hin Boo. Dr. Wee Hin Boo, I'll hand it over to you for the presentation.
Gentlemen, professors, and all the activists of the committee for inviting me as a keynote speaker for this morning. And I would like to talk about on how do we bring it to the general public so that we can have a optimized usage of capacity when it comes to monitoring and looking at our environmental data. So my name is again Dr. Wee Hin Boo. TS is actually I'm a certified professional technologist on marine research technology, especially in data management and big data. Yeah, specifically of climate change. I've been there since 2020. I will explain to you what actually a few I scientist for my current work. I'll explain to you what made the transition and what made the changes so that you can see how my background came from and what contribution in biological conservation, especially in places like the Southeast Asia, where we, regardless whether it is on the land, terrestrial, or in the deep ocean, we have a lot of diversity in Southeast Asia. It's just that we need a lot of capacity to survey them, to monitor them, to keep track of them. And with that said, we also need a lot of data scientists to look at those data, and so that we can of the data and send it to policymakers, so that we have a more comprehensive resources. And that's number one. So regarding to myself, and also what I can, what I have brought.
Sorry, Dr. Wee Hin Boo. We cannot hear you clearly. So maybe you can turn the camera for better signal.
All right. Can you hear me again?
Yeah, maybe better.
It's slow. So I will show you sorry. And also bringing policies from help the policy stories. And so I'm a researcher in University of Malaysia, and I'm a marine biologist. Organism interact different location.
Sorry, Dr. Win, we cannot hear you clearly.
Or it's just right now?
Maybe
Is
you
it
can
okay?
try again.
Now?
We still cannot hear you clearly, sorry.
Let me do can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Hello?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Technical. So my idea of my research in stress area, and whereby the stress area we try to link it to scenarios. So I have been going dive and to an extent the Indian Ocean. So I've seen a lot of data and I've collected a lot of them. And put it into a public domain, which means I put my photos for the public to raise awareness of the marine biology and their threats due to climate change. And at the same time, because I've been to multiple places for collecting my data, I have a lot of data. I have a lot of data to the sense that I need a few hard disks to keep all those data and analyze those data because of the sheer number. As a field biologist and a lab biologist as well, I had to turn into a data scientist because of the sheer number of my data. And with that said, I've learned how to through using R console or R statistical programming and also Python and Julia to a certain extent. So with that skills that and my work back in Japan, I managed to graduate in 2020. So what happened in 2020? Of the COVID, and so when I graduate, I immediately COVID, everything was locked down for the next like 1.5 year. So as a field biologist, I have to go out to the field to collect my samples. I have to go into my laboratory to run my experiment. I have to attend conference to understand what the most recent conservation and also climate change biology that has been done for the past few years during that position or period. However, as you know, we are all in a room, either watching Netflix or work ourselves through our computer. I do in my house, except for just wandering in my small four walls of units, and so it gave me an idea why at that same time the Malaysian publicly or open up the case of COVID patients, especially in the number of patients, the number of those intubated, and also the number of deaths. And in early April, I took the data and I tried to predict what's the number of patients or predicted patients from the 1st of April until the last day of May, the 31st of May. And I took the data from the world. For this graph, it was from the world, and I managed to predict the COVID patients by displacement of 2 days, which means my prediction was quite accurate. This was just we call it as a passion project. While we were in COVID quarantine, I just learned how to conduct a prediction of COVID cases of the world data, and prediction very much quite accurate. As you can see, the difference of the 5 million and 1 million 2 days or 2 days in difference. And it gave me a question that, you know, so both of us, all three of us, try to correlate Malaysians move around in Malaysia, whether it's for recreation or groceries, or even for work and transit, with number of, also how the economy proxy by the Bursa, the stock market of Malaysia. And we managed to predict that, you know, it took one, like, yes, means when the case starts to climb for 14, at least 10 consecutive days, then only there's some action that the government, the company, or the private sector start to take action so to COVID from spreading. And it took 60 days for the Bursa or the stock market of Malaysia to react to that the circuit breaker, or we call it the movement MCO, the movement control order. So we managed to show that, you know, human behavior, COVID cases, epidemic, and human behavior, and the data of economy can actually correlate, but it's not correlate by direct correlation, but there are certain lagging behind. And it actually provide policymakers an insight that say that, you know, what action we take today to control the pandemic not necessarily will happen immediately. It will take time to show the results. And so coming back to what my field of expertise is in biology and conservation. And it gave me a question. No, not a question, but 2 questions. Number 1, what if we can scrap and mine data from publicly available domain? Like, for example, government data, satellite image, or even NGOs data, which they generally produce reports of descriptive data, descriptive statistics, but not necessarily look into the models, the prediction, and the pattern recognition of the conservation effort. So what if I can garner or compile all those data and try to make a comprehensive overview or observation of how conservation efforts or public available data can provide into all the tables of policymakers to see how they can shape a better policy to conserve our environment. Secondly, is possible to help scientists or sciences to translate their data academically so that they can publish something which normal citizen science data cannot do, which means by giving them a more comprehensive data analysis procedure, looking into patterns, and also looking into how their effort makes a difference. Because most of the time, citizen sciences, they only provide the data to the domain without looking into what their data has made changes to not just they themselves or community, but in general, the bigger community. So I'm trying to help matters, then their data makes difference. So I try to use what I'm good at. data, the citizen scientist data, and certain degree governmental data that has been put up as public domain. Right. Oh, sorry, there's just a message for the public. Sorry. Uh, local projects. International collaboration. This is a paper that came out this year. Sorry for the title, but it's a catchy title. So this is about collaboration between at least 3 countries that to look into a highly urbanized island in the southern part of Japan. It's called an Okinawa Island. This was Sushi that he did something interesting when he was doing his PhD. Managed to map the coast of Okinawa and found out that only 40% of the coast of Okinawa is natural. The rest are marine or original coastline. And with that question and discussion among the collaborators, we found out that why don't we just draw the line of the coastline of Okinawa to see what has changed, what changed. What area, housing area, industrial area. And another one is Okinawa. 25% of Okinawa land is owned by the American military forces. So it has that coast of Okinawa being landfill and transferred to the military of America. So the Imperial Japanese Army map in 1919 to 1931, that was before World War One, where the Japanese Imperial Army drew the line, the coastline of Okinawa. So we 100. So then we redrew the coast and superimposed that coast to the current bay. The green one represent the old private and it was presented in the paper as well. So you can see the green one, the green land. By superimposing that, we can see a lot of coast in Okinawa. It's been replaced by landfill. And in fact, we try to categorize all the data, landfill area, location, marine area, and we try to put it into categories in different types of categories. Or whether is it coral reef or is it an open. And we made a table. We made a table on this. On top of this is the ocean, where whether is it a partial inner reef, whole inner reef, or the inner outer reef, the reef that you can see the ocean and the that has the had been turn into commercial land, ports, civilian, which we present residential, recreation, and artificial beach. Yeah, you hear that right. They turn a sandy proper beach. And then lastly is the military complex, whereby they built military land on landfill areas. That's the when we look into this data, it doesn't seem like a very data. This purpose it a better graph representation, and so they hooked me up into this project and asked me what we can do with this table. It's presented with this table, and I came up with this graph. So this you can see that with this graph you can see that how does it look like in 2018, 2019. So you can see how they repurpose landfill and armoring purposes. With that said, we can show this type of table directly. See? An interactive graph where you can actually, if you point at each raise awareness to the local government that's saying, hey, been so that you can preserve your economy, local economy. And so when we presented this, then we got that show that certain area has been developed and what sort of development has happened and what is the concern. We preserve the remaining coastline, natural coastline. So this basically what the international collaboration between myself and other people from Minnesota University in USA. We did this for just to prove our point that, you know, sometimes landfill not necessarily is used for the betterment of our ecosystem. On the story, I help out monitored the reef of Malaysia and to look at how the reef changes throughout time. The years and pattern change, and what changed with the coral reef as well. So, organization in Malaysia use volunteerism, the public, the general diving community to help them monitor the reefs in Malaysia. Because Malaysia, as you know, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines.
Sorry, Bu. Sorry, Dr. Bu. How if we help to share the screen so the connection become better?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Can you share slide number 19 for now? Thank you. I'm very sorry for the technical difficulties.
Yeah, it's okay.
Slide number 19. Yep. Thank you. Right. So, sorry for the technical difficulties. So this is basically we try to have the diving community to help us, to help Reef Check Malaysia to collect data of the coral reef throughout the 30 years. So next slide. For the past 20 years, we have managed to collect more than 500 sites of coral reef benthic cover. So to look into what's a healthy reef looks like and what's a bad reef looks like. And this is not just 513 sites throughout the 20 years, but instead more than 500 sites every year. So imagine 500 sites times 20, so we have around 1,000 data points because there are some sites has multiple location. So next. And throughout those years, they have been preparing a lot of reports, not just for the public, but also for the government to refer to look into how the coral reef in Malaysia has fared throughout the years, especially in, as you know, reef the changing of the environment, especially the warming of the ocean, that has caused our reef to bleach and our coral reef area. Next. Next, sorry. Yeah. So this is basically how, so let me say that throughout the 30 years, that's how the coral reef been changing from the 20 years. And then for that is only the coral reef cover. And luckily, reef check collected data not just on the benthic cover or the hard coral percentage, but they also did collect data for the fish, number of fishes, and there are 9 types of commercially important fishes in the reef that they identified, 9 types of invertebrates that are important to determine the health of the reef. However, very much. Or if you want to go to a coral reef and want to identify whether the reef is healthy or not, or is it alarmingly unhealthy, so that they can inform the local managers, so that the local managers can look into the location and to help out how to manage of the volunteer data. Next. And we isolated 3 benthic cover or 3 types of coral cover in the reef. Is it next? Sorry. Yeah. So we have 3 types of benthic cover: the hard coral, which is the bread and butter of coral reef, the important part of reef. And then we have nutrient indicating algae and coral rubbles. Nutrient indicating algae are the more nutrients in the water, the higher the number of nutrient indicating algae. The rubbles can indicate recent destruction or recent disturbances of the reef. So from these 3 categories, we try to see what are the important organisms in the fish and in the vertebrates categories. We managed to narrow it down to 7 types of fishes and invertebrates. Whereby if you go to the coral reef in the Southeast Asia, if you see parrotfish, butterfly fish, urchins, and sea cucumber, it might represent or indicates that the reef is on the decline. And if you see giant clam, which means the reef is doing well. But again, 7 organisms, 7 categories of organisms is still too much for some people to remember. And so we try to narrow it down further. Next. Sorry, next. All right, so we narrow it down further to only, sorry, the previous slide. We narrow it down to only 3 organisms. If you can see that 3 organisms, I'll show you. Suffice to say, if If it is unable, never mind. The three organisms will be, yeah, these three will be butterfly fish, parrotfish, and sea urchins. So from now on, if you go diving or if you go snorkeling around the coastal area, if you see uh, if you see parrotfish, if you see butterfly in the reef, that means it's a probably it's a, so we end my talk about the organization, and we'll go to local volunteering. Save Our Seahorse Malaysia. It's a very local and so the Save Our Seahorse is actually an organization that has we can count as one of the longest five running up until today. So we seahorse to observe seahorse, to track them, to count their population numbers. Next. So, okay, so this is our location. It's a small location called the Merambong Shoal. Merambong Shoal is a seagrass shoal where it's the largest seagrass bed in Malaysia. It has a lot of biodiversity, whether it's seagrass, seaweed, or even other invertebrates, right? So if you look into the into the seagrass patch of the Merambong Shoal, our target now is and which are these two organisms that are being highlighted at the bottom left. And next. So next. So next slide. So we have this monthly survey at the population of the seahorse data for the past 2007 to 2014. And you can see that the seahorse population has been declining at the area. Last time was more than 100 seahorses we can find. And when we go to the Merambong Shoal, we can immediately find. Next. It's because and Merambong Shoal, if you can see that green star is the Merambong Shoal, is sandwiched between two of the highest, one of the highest developed urbanized area in the streets of Johor in Malaysia, in the southern tip of Malaysia. And it's between Johor, the southern state of Malaysia, and Singapore, the city-state. And these two areas, Forest City and Tuas, is actually, they are all reclaimed land. Reclamation actually caused a lot of stress to the Merambong Shoal. Next. See, in 2000, if you can see the next map that I will pop up, that in 2017, there was a large reclamation through the Merambong Shoal. And then luckily, we managed to request for the developer to move that runway. Distress to the seahorses. Next. And after 722, me and my colleague start to go back to the Merambong Shoal because during the reclamation project, we couldn't access that place. But after that, we managed to access the place and we tried to survey area. Next. And we go to look in, we went in and surveyed the seagrass beds. And we look into how the seagrass beds change. Next. Yeah, next. So me and my student managed to get the seagrass composition, that how many percent is seagrass, how many percent is other organisms, sponges and whatnot. And we tried to project it on the map. If you can see in the map that the northern part of the seagrass of competition, whereby at the southern part of the Merabong Shoal is all one species, which is one of a very highly dense seagrass bed. So this gave us a question: how is there any difference between these two areas? Will there be a difference in seahorse distribution once the seagrass bed has been fractured into two different types of seagrass bed? And next, and that is why now I can't show you the data, but me and my students have been there every month to look into that location every month. Next, please. And to track the seahorses all across the seagrass bed. And we try to see if there's any seahorse difference between the north side and the south side of Merabong Shoal. This project has been helped by volunteers that are willing to pay themselves to go to the place with us. And then they also paid for, some of them paid for our boats to access that area. Because even though it is close to the reclaimed land, we cannot just walk from the reclaimed land to the shoal. Because in the middle, there's a very high current between the Merabong Shoal and the reclaimed land. So we have to take a boat to the Merabong Shoal during low tide once every month. Next. And so if I were to tell you, what if all these three, the international collaborations, the national organization, and the local community, these three projects were all done by citizen sciences. We collect from public domain available maps or available resources, and get from the public to get the data for us. And then I, as the marine biologist and the data scientist, and come up with final target of what I try to push is that by using statistic analysis, and then present so that the public can digest and what are the patterns our human development change the ecosystem or the habitat nearby. So next, moving to the final section of my presentation is what are the takeaway messages? So, sorry, is there next? Yeah. Tell you. There are of goals in the power of data. Whether is it a public domain data, government data, or even scientist data that have been sitting in the look around, look for those data, try to compare them with the current data, with the historic that force the amount of habitat to change, the changes with time, provided to the policymakers so that they can make better policy data. Now, there's a reason why biologists don't like numbers. A lot of people who doesn't like data or doesn't like numbers, they go into biology because they just don't want to look at numbers sometimes. And I'll show you later on how that is the situation. And thirdly is to learn to code,
Dr.
especially now.
Wigindu, you
Yep.
have 5 minutes left.
I'm almost done. Thank you. So the next one. So the next slide, please. So if you can see that there are goals in the data, especially like in Malaysia, we have fisheries data in Malaysia, the fisheries landing, the month, the what sort of fish, what sort of species, common names, what sort of vessel types, and market price. And these are all publicly available data. And next, I managed to help the fisheries of Malaysia to analyze their data throughout the past 20 years. And you can see that how different location in Malaysia has different type of catching rate and how they catch fishes. So it shows that no food security in Malaysia is very much state dependent or location dependent. So this data actually provided the government to have a targeted policy and how to manage our fisheries. The next one. And second, and with that said, I also co-developed a website called MyIklim. It's a one-stop data center to create Malaysian-centric climate change data. So if anyone wants to know about climate change, and especially in Malaysia's standpoint, or also the whole Southeast Asia, please check out our website, and you'll see how the website looks like in the next slide. Next, please. So as you can, this is a short GIF. I will share this slide to to the public, to the we meant to become a very public friendly website, whereby most of the data is bit-sized and it's easily where do we get the data, how we process the data. You can check the other details. The next one. Next slide, please. And so, like, coming back to every group needs a data nerd, because yeah, as you can see, we have a lot of books on statistics for biologists, especially the last one. It is so bad that, sometimes we have biologists hates numbers that we have. Because we need to understand what are the patterns. Next. So this data nerd like me can help to simplify and process the data from here to next. Yeah, to the graph that you saw earlier. So never mind. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. So if you have a good data scientist in your group, then it will produce a very good graph and a presentable graph. But let's move on to the last part. Learn to code, especially now. Most of our coding skills come from book. But if you want to understand how to learn how to code, we currently have a lot of resources. Next. I myself is currently I'm trying to do some YouTube videos to teach the public how to code in R and how to use biological data or conservation, ecological data to present your results. Next. 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 Yeah, so I have YouTube videos on how to use AI and how to uh, use R statistics uh, for analyzing your data. And especially now, we have large language models such as ChatGPT, Copilot, Cloud, Llama, Gemini. These large language models can actually assist you to learn how to code. So, but however, we have to understand that so please be careful when you use large language model or training process. Next. And next. Next slide, please. So yeah, please be careful with how you use a large language model. Before I end this presentation, I have a few self-promoting work to do. I'm actually currently actively conducting R statistic programming workshop, and I teach weekly on how to use statistics free software. Like many have asked me about how did I generate my visualization. I use R statistic programming. And next. And you can see the next slide will be on my institution. And the next slide, the last slide before I end this will be, next please. Next slide. Never mind. But before I end the presentation, thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to give a presentation. And I'm actually currently looking for anyone who are interested to collaborate to analyze your data, or you want to slide number 48. It's just an open invitation to anyone who wants to uh, study to further their study in a postgraduate and to learn how to analyze data comprehensively. You can always contact me in my email. And if who wants to have to further their postgraduate study, you can always contact me on that. Difficulties. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wihinbu. That was a very comprehensive and interesting presentation about the importance of bridging academic and citizen sciences, especially we need to learn to code. So ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, our third keynote speaker is Dr. Santiami from Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, Indonesia. Dr. Santiami is a lecturer in the Department of Biology Education, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, Indonesia. She has engaged in extensive research on ecology, environment, and botany, encompassing studies on the composition, structure, and carbon stock of diverse terrestrial ecosystems, as well as urban ethnobotany. Her current research explores the intersection of ethnobotany, conservation, and biocultural heritage, focusing on both rural landscapes like sacred forests and urban spaces like traditional markets, with the aim of supporting biodiversity conservation and cultural resilience in Indonesia. Today, she will talk about ethnobotany across landscapes in Indonesia, from urban markets to sacred forests. Without further ado, now let's please welcome Dr. Santiami. Dr. Santiami, I'll hand it over to you for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Rufina. Is my audio clear? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabihi ajma'in, amma ba'du. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, and with gratitude and humility, I begin these lectures by offering praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for granting us the opportunity in the spirit of the knowledge. I'm sorry. Tes. I'm sorry, there's a audio matter. Yeah. It is both an honor and a deeply humbling experience for me to be in this conference with you all today. Let me introduce myself once again. My name is Santiami. I am a lecturer and also a researcher in biology education at the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, with a concentration in ecology and ethnobotany. As this marked as my first opportunity to deliver a keynote lecture on international platform, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to all the organizers of the International Conference on Biology Education, Natural Science and Technology. And I would like to extend my warm acknowledgement to the Honorable Rector of Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, Professor Dr. Harun Joko Prayitno, the Dean of FKIP, Professor Dr. Anam Sutopo, the Head of Biology Education Program, Ibu Putri Agustina MPD, and my fellow keynote speakers, Associate Professor Dr. Petaji White of Deakin University, Australia, and Dr. Wee Hinbo of University Kebangsaan Malaysia. I am equally grateful to all college academic partners and all the participants who are present today. Your presence reflect a shared commitment to advancing scientific inquiry and community-based knowledge. The theme I bring today, ethnobotany across landscapes in Indonesia, from urban markets to sacred forest, for me is more than a chronicle of research. It is a reflection of my journey, both scholarly and spiritually, through spaces where human culture and plant biodiversity are linked. From the sacred incense offering found in bustling flowers market on Surakarta to the living tradition embedded in remote forests of West Sumatra, I hope to share with you insight into how plants shaped and are shaped by the lives of the people. May this session be a meaningful contribution to our ongoing dialogue on the intersection between nature, tradition, and science. To guide our session, I will start with the outline of my presentation to help us navigate the key dimension of the ethnobotany across Indonesian landscapes. We will begin with an introduction on why ethnobotany matters today as the foundation of our discussion. And then I will cover the core concept of the ethnobotany, its definition, historical roots, and the role in biodiversity conservation that offered a shared framework for everyone here. And then we will explore two key applications. The first one is medicinal plant in community healthcare, and non-edible plants that is used in ceremonials, making crafts, and also for the cultural practices. And if we have more time, I will try to highlight the edible plants deriving from my research at Pasar Gede or Grand Market in Surakarta, showing how food plants reflect the deep connection between biodiversity and the culture. And then we will then look at the final part of this lecture, especially in ethnobotany and conservation, how traditional knowledge supports biodiversity and sustainable practices with the case studies from the sacred forest and indigenous communities. And then we will conclude with the key takeaways and the future directions for this kind of research. And with this roadmap, let's begin our journey into the ethnobotany across Indonesia. To begin our discussion, allow me to share two simple figures, simple portrait, but yet powerful living of ethnobotanical knowledge. As you can see on the slide, the first pictures comes from the heart of Surakarta, Central Java. She's a vendor of the dried rhizomes of curcuma and other dried herbs as a common herbal remedy. This image represents urban ethnobotany, the knowledge that evolves within bustling markets shaped by the dynamic social interaction, commerce, and also multicultural exchange. And then the second image, as you can see on the slide, personally, it holds a deeply personal memories for me, as it captures a precious memory from my field research conducted back in 2007, nearly 2 decades ago. During that time, I had the privilege of meeting this remarkable lady shown here. She is a Paraji. Paraji in Sundanese, but in English we can call her as a traditional midwife. I spent time with her learning firsthand about the rich ethnobotanical knowledge embedded in maternal care practices within her community. And this photographs was taken in Kampung Duku. Kampung means village in English. So it's a secluded traditional village nestled in the highlands of West Java. It shows that a postpartum mother receiving, we call it in Sundanese, 40 rupi. 40 rupi is literally a meticulously crafted herbal formula composed of 40 different plant species. The sacred concoction is prepared with the great care of the Paraji as part of the holistic healing and protection ritual for both mother and the child. To me, this moment is not merely a documentation of a cultural practice. It reflects a profound relationship between people, plants, and the place. Both of these examples, one urban, one rural, shows us that ethnobotanical knowledge is very much alive. Yet the landscapes where this knowledge exists shape it differently. Urban landscapes foster adaptation, blending, and innovation, while rural landscapes often preserve deeper lineage-based tradition with ecological specificity. This understanding is very foundation of how we study ethnobotany, not as a static knowledge, but as a living, breathing interaction between people and the plants, and continuously shaped by place and context. Ladies and gentlemen, before we jump into the main research of ethnobotany, allow me to briefly provide the foundational context of ethnobotany, the discipline at the very heart of today's discussion. Ethnobotany is broadly defined as the scientific study of the relationship between people and the plants, a definition that widely accepted and cited from Cunningham, and more specifically, according to Martin and Catton, ethnobotany explores how local communities interact with, manage, and utilize the plant species for diverse purposes, ranging from food, medicine, and rituals, ceremonies, crafts, construction, and spiritual practices. The term of ethnobotany itself was introduced in 1895 by John W. Harshberger, originally a descriptive tool to catalog how indigenous communities use plants. However, over time, it evolved into an inherently interdisciplinary, bridging botany, anthropology, ecology, pharmacology, and also the conservation science. In the contemporary practice, ethnobotany serves as a mission that extends beyond documentation. So it is fundamentally linked to the conservation of biodiversity and cultural heritage that I will share with you on the last part of my talks today. Ethnobotanical research provides the crucial insights for sustainable resource management, empowering local communities while contributing to a broader environmental protection efforts. Thus, ethnobotany is not only a lens to view the human-plant relationship, but also a strategic tool for supporting conservation policies, community resilience, and ecological sustainability. This is the framework within which my research journey unfolds. So let's now move into the core findings of our recent study, which my college and I published in the Tropical Journal of Natural Product Research, titled The Exploring Urban Ethnobotany, a case study of medicinal plants traded in Gede Harjonagoro Market, Surakarta, Indonesia. Well, now maybe you might be wondering why Pasar Gede? Yeah, what makes this site particularly relevant for an ethnobotanical inquiry? Well, Pasar Gede or Grand Market is not just the largest traditional market in Surakarta. It's also a vibrant social cultural hub where layers of history, trade, and culture intersect. It's a place where herbal knowledge flows, passed down between generations across ethnic lines, and continuously negotiated between tradition and modernity. Surakarta itself, historically a royal city, is renowned for its deeply rooted Javanese traditions. But what's equally fascinating is its long history of cultural entanglement, especially with the Peranakan or the mixture communities of the Chinese, Arab, and Indian descents. This multicultural fabric has profoundly shaped the local knowledge system, particularly in relation to the medicinal plant use. From a methodological standpoint, we adopted a robust ethnobotanical approach, combining qualitative and quantitative techniques. Our data were collected through semi-structured interviews, participatory observation, and also a detailed field documentation. We engage directly with herbal traders, longtime customers, and respected knowledge holders within the community. To analyze the rich data set, we applied two well-established quantitative indices that is widely used in ethnobotany. The first one is the use value, which essentially measures the relative importance of each plant species based on how frequently it mentioned by informants. And then the second one is the fidelity level, which quantifies the level of consensus among informants regarding a plant's specific use for treating particular ailments. So this dual lens allowed us to not just catalog the species, but also to capture how embedded and relevant each plant is within a community's medicinal practices. In total, we recorded 76 medicinal plant species across 39 botanical families that is actively sold in Pasar Gede. This diversity is impressive for an urban market and indicates that the traditional medicinal knowledge remains very much alive in Surakarta. Among all species, Zingiber officinale or ginger surprisingly had the highest use value, reflecting its wide range of applications in everyday health management. However, the result from the fidelity level analysis, as you can see on the slide, there are 7 species showed 100% fidelity level, meaning that every informant agreed on their specific use for certain ailments. This include Elephantus cabor for hepatitis, Sonchus arvensis for kidney stones, Janura pseudochina for mastitis, Caesalpinia sappan for skin itching, Myristica fragrans, and Piper cuceba for diarrhea, and Curcuma hyeniana for treating intestinal worms or helminthiasis. This level of consensus is significant. It reflects a highly stable and widely accepted body of ethnobotanical knowledge, despite the modern urban setting in which this practice exists in Surakarta. When we look at the phytogeographical origins or the species, the origins of the species, the pattern becomes even more revealing. You can see out of 76 species documented, there are 50 are from the Indo-Malayan realm, subdivided into 21 species from Indochina, 12 from India, 9 from the Sunda Shelf, and 8 from the other Asian regions. And surprisingly, only 8 species are native to Java itself. So, yeah, if we can conclude this finding, this distribution clearly demonstrates that the Surakarta's medicinal plants repertoire isn't solely shaped by the local flora. Instead, it's the result of the centuries of trade, migration, intercultural exchange that particularly among the diverse mixture communities. In a sense, what we see at the Pasar Gede today is a biocultural archive. It is a living reflection of how knowledge flows across borders, adapted, maintained, and reinvented within the daily practices of a modern yet tradition-rich urban community. It also reminds us that the urban ethnobotany is not static. It's dynamic, responsive system that capable of integrating ancient wisdom within modern needs, sustaining both community health and cultural resilience in the city. Now I will move to another important part of the urban ethnobotany. This one is quite interesting. The study of non-edible plants. So these plants, though not consumed as food or medicine, it play vital roles in Japanese rituals, ceremonies, and crafts, traditional crafts. My recent research published in 2024 in Ethnobotany Research and Applications focused on these non-edible plants that traded into markets in Surakarta, Gede Market, and Kembang markets. In this research, we explored two Surakarta's most iconic traditional markets, Gede Harjonagoro and Kembang Market. And for your information, Kembang Market, Kembang means flower in Indonesia. So it's literally a market for flower. Both markets officially recognized as cultural heritage sites. Across these markets, we identified 48 species of non-edible plants spanning from 29 plant families. These species serve three primary functions in Surakarta society. Ceremonial, the first one for the ceremonial plants that is used in traditional Japanese ceremonies. And then ornamental for decorative and commercial floristry, and craft plant related. Yeah, it's used for the household and artisanal products. Notably, ceremonial plants, those used in Javanese rituals, from the majority underscoring the resilience of the spiritual tradition, even within an urban economic setting. These plants are not just incidental, they are integral to the expression of the identity, belief, and continuity of the Japanese cultural heritage. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can see some of Japanese ceremonies in this slide. So in the Japanese worldview, plants are not simply a passive materials. They are a active participants in human life cycle. The use of the ritual plants or the ceremonial plants reflects a highly structured philosophical system. For example, during childbirth, offerings like Kembang Bayan, Empon-Empon represent prayers for well-being and future guidance. Empon-Empon is a traditional offering in Japanese birth ceremonies, often include a bundle of aromatic and symbolic plants such as Acorus calamus, curcuma, and many more. And then accompanied by herbs like cinnamon burmanii, syzygium polyanthum, and others. Each chosen for its cultural, medicinal, and spiritual significance. Another example is in marriage. Flowers like kenanga, kantil, and jasmine are used for purity, transition, and ancestral blessing. Also in death, Combinations such as kembang talon suci and kembang konyo accompany the soul's journey to the afterlife. I try to put one picture here. It's we call it gunungan. Gunungan is the collection of the harvest plants or crops organized in a cone form that resemble a mountain. This gunungan will then be ravaged or battle over the event's crowd, typically as a form of the gratitude. The ritual or the ceremonies follow canonical guidelines or pakem in Japanese, preserved by the Royal Court of the Surakarta. What allows this continuity is not merely cultural memory. I put this slide to show you the supply chains of the non-edible plants. So the non-edible plant also an enduring and resilient supply network. Flowers, as you can see on the map, are cultivated in the fertile highlands surrounding Surakarta, such as Mount Merapi, Mount Merbabu. And timber and bamboo used for crafts are sourced from lower elevation in Sragen and Karanganyar. These materials are transported by the middlemen known as the mongers, who have established trust-based relationship with the farmers and the traders across generations. While each market also its distinct focus. The market serves as a broader utilitarian purpose, including crafts and household goods, while Kembang Market is highly specialized in ceremonies, flowers, and symbolic items. Yet, if we see the statistic, the cultural coherence between this market is statistically confirmed by Sorensen Similar Index over 70%. This data speaks to the shared ethno-cultural consciousness of the city and the unified role that this plant species played in the sacred and daily rhythm of the urban Javanese life. Maybe I will skip this part. Okay, as we move into the final part of the presentation, this is my favorite part, ethnobotany and conservation action. Allow me to share a more personal story that reflects how ethnobotany extends beyond academic discourse into the real-life conservation effort. What you see on the slide is a photo taken in 2017 during my fieldwork with the local communities in Bukit Badindiang. It located in Pasaman, West Sumatra. In the local Minangkabau language, Badindiang means having walls. So it's a poetic name that reflects how this hills is perceived by as being protected by invisible boundaries, both physical and cultural. Bukit Badindiang is classified as a hutan larangan or forbidden forest or sacred forest, where not every tree can be exploited. There are strict customary rules that determine which plants can be harvested, when, and by whom. This living system conservation, driven by indigenous knowledge, ensures that the biodiversity remains intact for generations to come. Standing alongside community members, documenting tree species, I was reminded that the conservation is not just about the protecting trees. It's about honoring the wisdom, the boundaries, and the ethic that local communities have practiced for centuries. This is the essence of the ethnobotany in action, where cultural values and ecological stewardship are deeply intertwined, offering powerful models for sustainable conservation. Let me now take you into the final part of my presentation, where we explore how cultural beliefs and ethnobotanical knowledge converge to protect nature. The Bukit Badindiang Sakar Forest, managed by Koto tribe in Pasaman. It holds a sacred status deeply tied to the community's identity. In its sanctity originates from being the water source for the whole village, and this functional significance is embedded within spiritual practices and customary law. What makes this forest exceptional from the ethnobotanical perspective is how protection focuses on species with low abundance. It's known locally as the Kayu Tungga Babeliang. Tungga, it's mean one, the only one in the whole region. Cutting these trees is strictly forbidden. Timber extraction is only allowed for vital communal needs, such as moss construction, or in the times of emergency, never for the commercial purposes. Meanwhile, the communities continue sustainable use of non-timber resources, harvesting fruits. You can get the honey, firewood, and medicinal plants without compromising the forest integrity. In a sense, this cycle forest serves not only as an ecological refuge, but also as a spiritual and cultural sanctuary, a living embodiment of ethnobotanical conservation. When we examine more the forest from the biodiversity and the carbon perspective, the cultural governance reveals remarkable outcomes. Nearly half of the species, 44%, exist as a single individuals per hectare. In any other context, such rarity might signal vulnerability. Here, however, it signals protection. The cultural prohibitions directly prioritize the conservation of these rare species. Several of these species are globally threatened, listed in the IUCN Red List, yet they persist here not because of external conservation interventions, but because of the belief-driven stewardship. Additionally, the forest function as a significant carbon sink, storing about 190 megagrams of carbon per hectare. The protection of the large mature trees further secures long-term carbon sequestration. The community's refusal to cut these trees, except under strict ceremonial permissions, directly contributes to climate change mitigation. What we see here is a profound synergy as a core landscape where the cultural identity, spiritual belief, and ecological resilience coexist. This is not just conservation, it's a conservation led by the heart of the community, guided by their inherited ethnobotanical wisdom. And I believe this is a model that modern conservation must recognize, respect, and learn from. As we reach the end of this presentation, one key message become clear. Ethnobotany is a living knowledge. It's dynamic, adapting to landscapes, many kind of cultures, and the changing needs of the communities it serves. From the vibrant markets of the Pasar Gede to the Sakar Forest of Bukit Badindiang, ethnobotanical knowledge sustains more than just livelihoods. It preserves food security, cultural identity, biodiversity, and even contribute to the climate resilience. And what we learn from these communities is that biocultural conservation is powerful. It is not merely about saving species, but about honoring the wisdom, practices, and values that protect ecosystem for generations. This is a reminder for all of us, researchers, educators, and practitioners, that ethnobotany is more than an academic pursuit. It is a bridge connecting science, tradition, and conservation. And it also calls for collaboration that respect and uplift local knowledge. Before closing, I sincerely apologize for any shortcomings in this presentation, whether in my delivery, choice of words, English limitation, or the limitation of the time. It has been my deep honor to share this journey with you all today. I truly hope this conservation leads to the future collaboration with you all today, shared research and meaningful actions that support both biodiversity and the communities that's safeguarded. Thank you for your kind attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Santiami. That was a very comprehensive and interesting presentation about ethnobotany across landscapes in Indonesia, from urban markets to sacred forest. Ladies and gentlemen, now we've come to the Q&A session. For the first round, we are going to select the first 3 questions for our keynote speakers. I invite those who have raised their hand to open the microphone and mention to whom your question is addressed. So for the first question from Anur Indra Kusumadani, please to whom your question is addressed.
Thank you, Chief Dawati. I think I want to ask a question for Ms. Santiami. I really interested with your explanation, Ms. Santiami. I have a question. In your opinion, what are some effective strategies or approaches that could be implemented to ensure that ethnobotanical knowledge, especially the rich and diverse plant-based tradition from Indonesian culture, can be meaningfully integrated into the formal education system at various levels, from primary school to higher education?
Dr. Santiam, you may answer the question.
Thank you, Pak Anwar, for the question. If I can conclude the question, your question is how do we explore the ethnobotanical knowledge to be integrated in Indonesia? Sorry for that. Pak Anur, if I can conclude your question about the ethnobotanical knowledge that can be integrated into the formal education, right? That's an area that I am personally passionate, because I'm a lecturer myself. I strongly believe that the integrating ethnobotanical knowledge into formal education, especially at the primary and secondary levels, offer powerful way to contextualize science and make it more relevant to students. For instance, instead of introducing photosynthesis using abstract models or foreign plants, we can use turmeric, cassava, or plants that children see in their home gardens. This approach grounds biological concept in their everyday life reality. Similarly, when we talk about ecological interaction, using stories about how communities manage psychoforests, just like what we showed before, can connect students emotionally and cognitively. And moreover, ethnobotany nurtures a sense of environmental stewardship that rooted in the culture, not just science. And when children learn that their ancestors respected certain trees or flowers, they begin to see conservation not as an external duty, but as a cultural continuity. This emotional grounding is often missing in formal curricula. To make this happen, we need cross-sectoral efforts from the curriculum reform, teacher training, and community school partnership. Ethnobotany, in this sense, become a bridge, not just between science and tradition, but between classroom learning and real-world relevance.
Okay, here I saw some questions in the question box in the chat feature, although probably between the participants and the keynote speaker already discussed a bit, but maybe we can discuss more. So from Putri Ayu Ika from Universitas Muhammadiyah Lamongan, so she conducting research on the impacts of environmental pollutants such as micro, nano plastics that can pose serious threats to health, particularly the immune and respiratory systems. And she asked to Dr. Pita White, in that context, what strategies can be implemented to ensure that research findings like this have broader societal impacts and integrated into public education? And also the second question for Pita from Evri Rosiati from Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. So what is the impact of global climate change on environmental education when we know that the environment is not always in line with government policy? And for Dr. Wihin Bu, we also have some questions here. First from Tutik Sri Wahyuni. So she interested about the data visualization that you use in your presentation. So what kind of software and how the data can be interpreted. And second question from Evri Rosiati for Dr. Wihin Bu about if the impact of global climate change is very clearly and visible on marine organisms, what about inland organisms and what happened in the terrestrial plants, for example? So you may answer the question. Probably Dr. Pita White can going first to answer the question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the question was great, and I posted a response in the chat if that's helpful to anyone who has a chat. So the question about microplastics, I think microplastics are an excellent example of a socio-ecological challenge. Our life with plastics is certainly easier in many ways, but the implications of having plastics in our society, as I'm sure Wihin Bu would agree, are significant, especially in our marine ecosystems. So I think the opportunity there is to rethink how we generate plastics, focus on biodegradable plastics, and how we can move the fossil fuel generated plastics out of our system, but also how do we manage with the plastic that we already have in our systems? These are really great challenges to take up with your groups of young people or your communities living in particular situations. So a fantastic example of how do you conduct research with communities, especially with young people where you're taking up socio-ecological challenges. Thanks for that question.
Satu lagi.
The second question was about how to engage with politics and governments. And my response in the chat was really to remind us all that we are part of policy making, and we do that through in democratic situations anyway, by electing people to make decisions for and with us. So I encourage the appreciation of the politics of your particular area to be discussed clearly with your young people, to engage them in thinking about how do we generate leadership and how are we responsible in the decisions that are made at any level of governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pitawait, for such a clear explanation. So for the next question, Dr. Wihinpu, you may answer the question from the participant.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. So for the first question, how did I generate that graph is basically the data that we've seen, graph, the data collection, the data cleaning, everything done in R statistical programming. So you have a few options to do it, either using R, Python, or Julia, depending on which one you are more comfortable with. And regarding to her question, may I share my screen for a moment, just to short explanation of this graph. So, see this graph, the left side is look at the top left graph. Yeah, the left side is one period of a category, the other side period of category, and the line here is the linkage. Like for example, one individual moves to from one period to another period category. That line represents the number of individuals that has been transformed from the thickness of the line itself, data, something of data, which means the thicker line has more individuals transforming from river mouth to commercial area. There are lesser individuals from river mouth to, let's say, unused green land. So Sankey graph can show you how the changes of the individuals throughout two periods. And on the second question of climate change, is it visible on land organisms or not? I would say yes, very, very much. And it is one of the best example, like I mentioned in the chat, was last had a very huge agricultural industry when it comes to paddy farming. We only supply 66% locally. 66% of the our rice is coming from local, but the rest are imported from other countries. And last year, because of a severe drought in India, India government decided to ban all export of rice out Malaysia as well. Why? Because of climate change, it so happened that the oscillation of ocean and the climate that made the drought much worse than predicted. So it became the scarcity or issue of land-wise. You can see in the coming future, if we don't try to mitigate or remediate the climate change issue, one of the largest impact to our well-being will be food security, because we will have problem with rearing animals, land animals. We will be having problem with our agriculture as well. especially those that are important for our. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wihinbu. That very detailed answer question for Tutik Sri Wahyuni and Every Rosiati. So I will open one more question for Nadifa. So you may ask the question to the keynote speaker.
Okay, thank you for giving me the chance to ask. Okay, excuse me, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Nadifa Najwa. I'm from Biology Education Department from Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta. First of all, thank you very much, Dr. Santiami, for your amazing talk. I was especially fascinated by the part where you shared about the ritual use of plants in Japanese ceremonies. It's something that I've never heard explained that way before. I'm curious, with so many young people today growing up in more urban and modern environments, how do you think this traditional plant-based ritual will evolve or be preserved among younger generations like ours? Do you see any ways we can stay connected to these practices while still living in a fast-paced digital world? Maybe that's all. Thank you.
Dr. Santiami, you may answer the question.
Okay, thank you, Nadifa, for the excellent and very timely question. What I've observed, especially through my research in Surakarta, is that while the external forms of ritual may undergo simplification due to time constraint, limited space, and shifting lifestyle, the underlying cultural remain surprisingly resilient. Many young people today might not carry out full traditional ceremonies, but they still retain certain symbolic elements, just like you can see we still use jasmine flowers in the wedding or the turmeric and betel leaves in the birth-related customs. This selective retention is not just a sign of the cultural erosion, but rather as a form of the adaptation. So the key word is the adaptation. It reflects how tradition finds new life within the pace of the modern urban living. More interestingly, there is a growing awareness and desire among young people to reconnect with their heritage as part of the identity formation, cultural pride, and even the wellness practice. And here's where social media becomes truly transformative. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube have become powerful vehicles for reviving and sharing ethnobotanical knowledge. You will find creative content about traditional medicinal plants, tutorials and to make herbal drinks like jamu, or even storytelling about the ancestral practice related to plant, often presented in a visually appealing, accessible ways through YouTube. There is also a noticeable rise in the movements of like organic local food plants and eco-conscious living, driven by young creators who combine tradition with sustainability and aesthetics. These digital platforms help frame the traditional plant-based knowledge not as something outdated, but something stylish, healthy, meaningful, and deeply rooted in a local wisdom. This reframing allows ritual plants and ethnobotanical practices not only to survive, but to thrive, especially when they presented in ways that resonate with the values and the lifestyles of the today's youth. And ultimately, I believe the continued relevance of these practices depend on how we as the educators, researchers, and even content creator can document this all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Santiami, for a very clear explanation. Apparently, we have still some question or topic to be discussed. However, due to our limited time, we need to end our discussion session. Ladies and gentlemen, we have finally come to the end of the main session of INCOBES 2025. Please allow me to take some highlighted points from today's main session. From our also look into the importance of understanding the socio-ecological challenges to engage in climate change education. We also learned how integrating citizen sciences with academic research can create powerful frameworks for environmental and conservational guidelines and policies. And we also learn how culture and nature can evolve, ensuring resilience for both ecosystems and the communities that depend on them. Therefore, by integrating interdisciplinary approaches, combining natural science with cutting-edge technology, we can promote innovative learning methods to prepare future generations for a rapidly evolving scientific landscapes. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I would like to thank our great keynote speakers, Associate Professor Pita J. White, PhD, Dr. Wihin Bu, and Dr. Santiami for their comprehensive, informative, and interesting presentation. And also thank to all the participants for their active participation. Please give applause for the speakers and for you all. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the INCOBES 2025. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Over to you, Ms. Gendis.
Thank you, Mrs. Vina Listiawati, PhD, for bringing us to a very interesting and productive session today. May all the presentation and discussion give us more insights on many emerging issues on natural science, environment, and its learning innovation. For appreciation, we would like to slide through the certificates awarded to all the presenters. Professor Peter Jue, PhD. Dr. Wihin Bu. Dr. Santiami, Magister Stain. Thank you for all the presenters for delivering such amazing knowledge and experience. Now, I'd like to read some announcements for the participants. Please pay more attention. First, participants should join the Zoom link that have been shared before. It's included in the abstract book. Second, presenters who still need to collect article and PowerPoint presentation should immediately collect on the available link. Remain participants to immediately register their presence in the Zoom chat room because it will be closed after the main session is finished. Alhamdulillah, thanks to Allah, we finally finished all the agenda for today. On the behalf of the committee, we would like to say thank you for your active participants today. We ask for your forgiveness for any wrongdoing and have a great rest of your day. See you in the fourth Inkobes next year. Insyaallah. I am Gendis Anggista signing off. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.